All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Demystifying Zero Trust. I'm Chad Scott, Channel Account Executive with Sophos, and joining me today is Scott Logan, Director of Security at NetGain Technologies. Scott has over 40 plus years of experience in the technology industry and 10 plus years specific to IT security. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you, Chad, and thank you for inviting me.
It's always a pleasure to have you. All right, we're going to kick things off right away with a poll. We want to hear from the participants. So we'd like to start out to understand how much the audience knows about the zero trust philosophy. It's somewhat of a new philosophy. Are you a beginner? Are you an intermediate? Or are you what do you call an expert in zero trust? Now, Scott, zero trust is a new term being thrown out in the industry today. It's kind of a buzzword, right? What have you heard about this topic from some of your clients? Are they talking to you about this concept?
They are, Chad. They're asking more and more about the zero trust philosophy. They like the idea of it. It's so new. They just don't understand all the concepts behind it yet. So I'm hoping that we can share some good light on it today.
Okay, understood. So yeah, let's get the results of the poll now coming in. Let's see where we are with everybody. Okay, we've got some beginners and a couple intermediates. It's you're right where you need to be. Perfect. So by the end of this, you're going to have far more knowledge, and I can consider yourself an intermediate into this world. So you're right where you need to be with understanding zero trust. Okay, let's jump into the presentation. Scott, you ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready, sir. Let's go.
All right. Now, trust is a dangerous word in IT. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it certainly can be, especially if that trust is implicit or when it's unqualified or unquestioned. Creating a large sealed off corporate perimeter and trusting everything inside is proven time and time again to be a flawed design. See, those soft and chewy centers are a hacker's dream, and once inside, they're often invisible and very difficult to discover. And as it spreads across the network, accessing important systems and causing more and more havoc, as most of the security controls and strongest checks are only at the perimeter. See, whether we like it or not, the perimeter has been eroded. Users want to work remotely on untrusted networks like Wi-Fi in a cafe or a hotel, or thanks to events like the COVID-19 virus, work from home, and sometimes use their own personal devices to access corporate data and resources. Furthermore, the use of software as a service or SaaS apps or cloud platforms and services leaves our data outside of our corporate perimeters protection. Look, nowadays, everything is everywhere. Yet this old model fails to empower businesses to embrace transitioning to the cloud while simultaneously protecting their data, their assets, and their users.
All right. So, Scott, as I understand it, zero trust is a holistic approach to security. It's a trust nothing model and a philosophy for how to think about and provide security. Now, whereas before zero trust, many IT departments were just kind of following a trust, but verify model. Am I right on that?
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
So no one and no one thing should automatically be trusted, be it inside or outside of the corporate network, even the network itself. Look at it like a firewall. When you're configuring a firewall, do you open access to everyone, allow all, and then start removing access? Or you do deny access to everyone and then start opening just the access you require? The latter, right? Eventually, something needs to be trusted, but with zero trust, the trust provided is temporary and established from multiple sources of data, more than we've ever used in the past, and it's constantly reevaluated. We have plenty of experience with an untrusted network like this. The internet. Computers that are facing the public internet are secured in a very different manner to those that are inside the traditional perimeter. The zero trust model guides us to treat all devices as if they were internet facing. Instead of having one single perimeter, we must create many micro perimeters or micro segments, applying checks and controls around everything and between everything.
Okay, Scott, let's get real here, because zero trust, it's a big idea, and there's a lot of evolving discussions around it. I heard it could be quite challenging, and you know me, right? I need it as simple as possible. Can you simplify it for us?
I'm going to do my best. So, at its essence, there's a few major concepts for zero trust we need to keep in mind. Number one, there is no inside the network. Pretend that we're running your entire business from an untrusted location, like a cafe, and that all your devices are connected directly to the most challenging part of your network, the public internet. By imagining that this is our new reality, we are forced to apply security in ways where we can't rely on being behind a traditional corporate perimeter. Look, there will always be corporate trusted networks for administration and in-house systems, but the goal is to keep ordinary users off of those networks, using app proxies and other technologies, drastically reducing our attack surface. Number two, trust nothing, verify everything. Assuming that our attackers are on both sides of our network, the outside and the inside, and they are there all the time, constantly trying to attack. No user or device should automatically be trusted. By imagining we're under a constant attack from every direction, we are pushed to build a rock solid authentication and authorization to our resources and layer our defenses and constantly monitor and analyze everything happening across our estate. Number three, security should adapt in real time. The security policies we put in place to achieve zero trust should be dynamic and automatically change based on insight from several sources of data, from as many different technologies as possible. A static policy like this user on this device can access this thing won't protect you if that device has become compromised. If our policy also took into account device health, such as the identification of malicious behavior, our policy could use this to dynamically adapt to the situation with zero effort from our administrators.
Okay. All right, I'm getting there. All right, thank you very much. Now we've covered our first concept in zero trust. There's no inside the network. Let's dive into our next concept. Trust nothing and verify everything.
All right, that's a very powerful statement, right? Trust nothing ever. For when we trust nothing, we are forced to seek relevant security measures wherever there is risk. Verify everything. Do not assume that simply passing a check naturally affords trust. Having credentials doesn't mean you're trustable. It just means you have credentials. We can break this into four simple principles to keep in mind. Always identify. We need a singular authoritative source of identity and use it everywhere. Everything should be authenticated with multi-factor authentication, or MFA. So no matter where the user is, whatever they're trying to access, validate their credentials, validate they have a second or third factor, and constantly require re-authentication. If credentials are stolen or a system is hijacked, MFA and regular re-authentication will quickly put a stop to the attacker. Always control. Apply controls and checks wherever they are needed and adopt and enforce the principles of least privilege. Users should only have access to the bare minimum that they need to perform their job. If there's a human resources and HR system utilized by the HR department, then only the HR staff should have access.
Okay, that's two of the four. Always identify and always control. And that makes perfect sense. I'm with you, Scott. All right. But what else do we have to do?
All right, let's continue. Always analyze. Just because an authentication was successful or access is granted to that user device doesn't mean that it's trustable. Insider threats and malicious actors still may gain access to the valid credentials. Record all network and system activity and regularly analyze it and inspect it to verify what occurs post-authentication. Utilizing tools like Managed Detection and Response, or MDR, or SOC as a Service can provide the monitoring and analysis your network requires. Always secure. Use an inside-out approach to cybersecurity. We should be focusing on our important data and working our way out, identifying points of vulnerability along the data's journey, starting from within our network, from the moment it is created until the moment it is destroyed. Always consider risk above all else. even over compliancy and regulation. Applying security purely to meet a compliance check or a regulatory requirement is dangerous. Compliance guidelines do not understand what is in our network, the flows and the workloads, the systems and the technologies. They don't know the risks relevant to each and every possible element of our network.
Okay, so I've got this. Always identify, always control, always analyze, and always secure. Those are the 4 principles we need to keep in mind. Now, all right, we're back to the participants here. We like to hear from the audience. So which of the following security measures has your organization already adopted? Let's see here. Is it multi-factor authentication? Are we talking endpoint control? And we're going to caveat that in a second. Hold on before you choose that one. Advanced threat, SOC as a service, or managed detection and response. All right, Scott, this is my favorite part of this where you kind of play Nostradamus here. So in your experience, first, what controls are you seeing in place and what do you think is going to be the #1 choice here?
Well, my eyes immediately draw to the endpoint control. I think that a lot of people may simply jump to that because they have an antivirus solution. Please don't check that box if you're just using an AV. You need an endpoint control that is more complete. USB protection, application whitelisting, web filtering at the endpoint. If you ask me which one of these I think most people are already adopting and moving forward with, I'm going to say multi-factor authentication.
All right, well, let's see how you did, Scott. Let's put the poll up there for the results. Oh, okay.
They jump to that endpoint.
Yep, you made the warning though. There you go. But a lot of room for growth there and a lot of opportunity, definitely. So thank you participants for participating in that. Excellent. All right, we're back to our zero trust journey now. Back to the road here. So let's discuss micro-segmentation, Scott, if you would please.
Sure. So segmentation is breaking up something larger, like a big flat network, into smaller pieces. Doing so enables us to create micro perimeters around every workload, every device, every user, every application, every data store, every single network segment.
Oh, wait, Scott, shoot. Flat networks, I'm sorry, you lost me again. What are we talking about here?
All right, a flat network means that everyone and every device has access to each other. Look, not every user needs access to every server or database. Is there a manufacturing system only used on the plant floor? Then members of the accounting staff shouldn't have access to it and vice versa. Microsegments can come in many forms. They can be network segments like VLANs or different subnets that only specific IPs or IP segments can reach. They can be groupings of authenticated or authorized users utilizing role-based access controls. How about endpoint and firewall detection solutions that can isolate machines to take them offline when a threat is recognized or detected? Regardless of their location, that is important. They can even be web proxies for web applications so that each app is protected against exploitation and only the relevant users can authenticate for access. What's important is that we move away from all things on one network and a single perimeter trying to protect it.
Okay, so let's talk about benefits, right? What kind of benefits can we expect with incorporating the zero trust philosophy, Scott?
All right, with zero trust, we're able to still maintain security even when we don't own or have full control over the infrastructure we use. We're able to control our entire estate from inside the office all the way to the cloud platforms. No more lack of control outside of the corporate perimeter or struggles with remote users. We no longer see things as inside or outside of the corporate perimeter. We're able to manage and secure both our remote users and internal office users in the exact same way. Remote users no longer need to be limited or treated separately. Even BYOD or bring your own device type of platforms can have a safe and secure strategy to implement. By utilizing a layered defense using identity controls, location controls, device health controls, MFA, and then overlaying monitoring and analysis, we're able to have a strong security across any kind of environment, platform, or service. Also, the ability of malware or attackers to spread within the network is drastically limited. Rather than having free reign of the entire network, once inside, they only have access to a bare minimum number of systems, Remember the micro parameters I was talking about and least privilege. Also, by continuing to distrust the authenticated users, checks will be in place between those systems, further limiting the ability of malicious spread.
All right, Scott. So, all right, how do we move our networks towards the zero trust and take advantage of all the benefits it has to offer, right? We're on this road on the zero trust journey. So take me through this. The first one I think we're going to do is define our surface and identify resources. Am I right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is really important because we have to understand what we're going to be dealing with here. What surfaces we're hoping to secure, control, and monitor. What are our resources in use, our services, our apps, our devices, and so on. Having a clear scope or inventory of everything that is in use across the entire network.
Okay, got it. Step one, that's not bad. How about step two? Map standard and privileged pathways. Am I right?
You're right. Okay, so once we have everything scoped out, we have our inventory. Now we need to map out our pathways. What connects to what? What are our data flows, our behaviors, and our relationships? Between everything that is standard and expected, this group of users will access this app, this device will connect to this network, this service uses this data store, and so on. But also, what are the privileged pathways? This admin will want to connect to this management console. A remote desktop needs to connect to this server. That's just a few examples, but privileged pathways will almost certainly demand extra security and controls applied to them.
Got it. Understood. All right, halfway there. Next step, architect a zero trust network.
Okay, this is building nicely. So we can now start to apply our zero trust philosophies to it. Identify which security measures and access controls we want to apply and where. What technology will best mitigate which risk and so on. Some examples, IAM, Identity Access Management, or PIMS, Privacy Information Management System. PAM, a privilege access management control, or even LAPS, a local administrator password solutions. Those are all great examples of access controls to help create and identify least privilege.
Okay, so we've architected the zero trust network. Now we're going to create the zero trust policies.
Exactly. So next we need to implement the zero trust policies that we will use from as many different sources as possible to add context to the connection or the request. This is what's going to make the decisions about what actually is allowed to happen.
Perfect. Perfect. Understood. And finally, monitor and maintain our perimeters.
Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to overlay everything with detailed monitoring so that we can maintain those newly created perimeters. This is one of the biggest challenges admins face. With zero trust, we need to be monitoring the events that take place, take advantage of monitoring tools and services to understand the root cause, how the threat entered the environment, and the corresponding behavior of the threat.
You know, that wasn't that bad, right? The zero trust seemed a little bit daunting, but utilizing this map and your help, I think participants can get there. So very good. Now, Scott, your organization, in your organization, you come across a various amount of challenges all the time, and I'm sure you have clients that you've helped over the years that could have greatly benefited from the zero trust model. Do you have any examples off the top of your head that you've seen this?
Absolutely, Chad. We help organizations battle from cyber attacks all the time, where components of the zero trust model could have been maybe even preventive of the attack. Here's an example. An organization had reached out because of a compromise to an administrator's account. The attacker had free reign across the entire network, and it took days to rebuild from the damage. Zero trust controls like MFA, micro-segmentation, and least privilege policies could have thwarted that attack. Another business reached out to us due to a ransomware attack across the entire estate. And once again, layering disciplines of the zero trust model could have been effective in preventing or at least minimizing the attack. For example, if the endpoints had the ability to recognize the threat and immediately respond to the attack by removing themselves from being online, or if a managed detection program was in place, it could have recognized the threat and reacted efficiently and effectively. Of course, a flat network in this case allowed for more access than should have ever been required. So once again, micro-segmentation of the network would have reduced the attack surface. As you can see, Chad, this is just one solution. It's a layered approach to an extremely strong protection.
Yeah, there is no, magic bullet, right, Scott? But with your experiences you talked about right now, and the map that you can lay out, it can't be a daunting task. People can get there. So it's nice to know you've got the experience and you've got the know-how to lead your clients to where they need to be. All right, let's try to lay this out for the audience. So right here, I know you're going to be proud of me of this, Scott. We have a variety of resources that are in scope, the things we want to make secure with zero trust. What do I do next, Scott?
All right, man, look at you. So according to this map, looks like you've done your homework, man. You've already performed your inventory. So now we need to map out the standards and privilege pathways between all these resources and assets to understand how they connect to each other and which ones are vitally important to lock down. Next, we need to overlay this with automation and orchestration tools that will help us automate the workflows and achieve the adaptive and dynamic policies that we require. Remember in my real life examples how MFA and some defined access control policies could have been preventive for this business to be attacked? That's what we're talking about with automation and orchestration. Then we overlay it with visibility and analytics so that we can see the big picture and identify potential threats and incidences as quickly and efficiently as possible. Once again, referring to my examples where SOC as a service log monitoring or network MDR could have been preventive in the attack. These parameters around our resources and the pathways between them are where we need to apply our security controls to achieve a zero trust network. We need to identify which technology, service, or solution best mitigates each risk we have. Examples would be endpoint protection solutions. This can help secure all the endpoints listed on your map. A visibility and threat response solution. This can help secure data within the public cloud, devices, workloads, and networks. Even a next generation firewall can be very helpful in filtering access and securing all of the resources and devices listed above.
Yeah, endpoint protection, threat response, and general firewall. Sounds very familiar. All right. All right. Employing technologies like those will put us in a good standing when moving to a zero trust model. However, wait a second. No one technology can move us to a zero trust environment, right, Scott?
That's true. I mean, it requires a cultural shift in the way we think about cybersecurity, a layered approach to protection, and the reorganization of our entire IT infrastructure.
Okay, so in summary, I think I've got this. And everybody else, if you remember nothing else from this presentation, this is what you should remember. 1, there is no inside the network. 2, great phrase here, trust nothing, verify everything. And 3, security should adapt in real time. What do you think, Scott? Do I have it?
I think you got it, man. So as it stands, zero trust, it's simply just a philosophy towards cybersecurity, with probably very few that are ready and able to embrace it. However, as our security perimeters continually erode, the need for adoption will become increasingly prevalent. Cyber criminals are only getting more innovative, and our defenses are struggling to keep up. The zero trust model represents a way to truly minimize threats, all the while establishing new standards in cybersecurity. Chad, it's time we think a little bit differently than how we have in the past. It's time to evolve.
I'm with you, Scott, and I know you can lead that in the right direction. So perfect. Okay, with that, let's open up the floor to our participants for some questions. And as a reminder, you can submit your questions into the box in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. Let's go to the chat and let's go to the questions and see what we've got from our participants. All right, we've got first one coming in. Let's see, Scott, this one. If it's going to be hard to change because I have an existing infrastructure, how do I get started when it comes to zero trust?
Well, we have to remember that it's not a light switch. You just can't turn it on. You got to start small and build. It's a layered approach to cybersecurity, adding elements like MFA or MDR platforms for recognition of threat. That's the great first step.
It's not hard. I get it. Just baby steps through the map, and you'll get there, no problem. All right, let's see what else we've got for questions. All right, I've got one here, Scott. Will this model be hard to deploy in the deploy in the new work from home environment? Is this going to be tough?
Actually, it's ideal. Being able to protect our assets regardless of where they're located is one of the most powerful elements of zero trust. Remember, the protection is consistent no matter where the user is located. So that can be a value add to the protection for those remote users.
Perfect, very good. We've got one other question here, and Scott, I don't know if we can handle this together. What's going to be the cost of a zero trust model? It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question, and once again, it comes in phases. It's a layered approach to certain aspects. Some things may be more expensive than others. I would recommend in the MFA platform to work with a MFA that works best for your scenario. If you're cloud-based or mostly cloud-based, there are solutions in the Azure element for providing MFA there. There's other solutions for local MFA provisioning. Choose wisely in what direction you want to go with that. But it's different per different solution. A lot of this controls, the access controls, just need to be enabled and structured. They're not even things you need to add to your resources. So spending time on that may be more profitable and simply easier to stand up.
Yeah, and I know you and the other NetGain technology associates can definitely help with those questions and that roadmap stair step to get there.
Definitely can.
You guys, I know that you're in the good hands in that regard. Another question, Scott, how does zero trust work with service accounts?
Well, it works with service accounts in the element that you can put in access controls for that service. If that service is going to be something that needs to be accessed by this user, there's controls around that user's access and utilization of those services. It's simply an oversight of what that service is going to be doing and what access needs to be acquired to that service. So that's how the zero trust networking works in the service aspect.
Perfect, very good. All right, Scott, looks like we've got one final question. It's on automation. So every time automation is discussed, people get a little skittish on what it means. Can you elaborate on what those automation tools are?
Well, it's simply taking the manual process out of our services. We want our policies to be intelligent enough to protect our network without administrators having to pull the trigger. The more data sources that we can use to automatically make good decisions when protecting our network, that's the key to zero trust.
That's the key. Very good. Okay, looks like that's it for questions. Participants, thank you for those questions. That's great. We hope this isn't the end of the journey and the end of the discussions around on cyber or on zero trust, excuse me. And we'd like to know how NetGain Technologies can assist you in the future. And if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to NetGain Technologies using the contact information on the screen. Hey, I'd like to thank our expert. Scott, thank you so much for your insights and your expertise. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Chad.
And I'd like to thank everyone else for attending today's webinar, Demystifying Zero Trust. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe out there, and thank you for participating.